Sir Peter Robert Jackson on the KNZM is a New Zealand film director, producer and screenwriter. He is best known as the director and producer of the Lord of the Rings trilogy and its prequel, the Hobbit trilogy, both of which are adapted from the novels of the same name by J.R.R. Tolkien. Other notable films include Heavenly Creatures, Forgotten Silver, The Frighteners, King Kong and the Lovely Bones. He also produced District 9, The Adventures of Tintin and the documentary West of Memphis. Jackson began his career with the splatstick horror comedy Bad Taste and the black comedy Meet the Feebles before filming Braindead. He shared an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay nomination with his partner Fran Walsh for the film Heavenly Creatures, which brought him to mainstream prominence in the film industry. Jackson has been awarded 3 Academy Awards in his career, including the award for Best Director in 2003, and has been nominated for 9 Academy Awards overall. He has also received a Golden Globe, 4 Saturn Awards and 3 BAFTAs amongst others. His production company is Wingnut Films, and his most regular collaborators are co-writers and producers Walsh and Philippa Boyens. Jackson was made a Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit in 2002. He was later knighted by Annan Sutherland, the Governor-General of New Zealand, at a ceremony in Wellington in April 2010. Early life: Jackson was born on October 31, 1961 in Wellington and was raised at the nearby coastal town of Pucra Bay. His parents are Joan, a factory worker and housewife, and William Jackson, a wages clerk, were both immigrants from England. His father was a veteran of the Siege of Malta in World War II. As a child, Jackson was a keen film fan, growing up on Ray Harryhausen films as well as finding inspiration in the television series Thunderbirds and Monty Python's Flying Circus. After a family friend gave the Jacksons a Super 8 cine camera with Peter in mind, he began making short films with his friends. Jackson has long cited King Kong as his favorite film, and around the age of 9 he attempted to remake it using his own stop-motion models. Also as a child, Jackson made a WWII epic called The Dwarf Patrol scene on the Bad Taste bonus disc, which featured his first special effect of poking pinholes in the film for gunshots, and a James Bond spoof named Coldfinger. Most notably though was a 20-minute short called The Valley, which won him a special prize because of the shots he used. In school, Jackson expressed no interest in sports. His classmates also remember him wearing a duffel coat with an obsession verging on religious. Jackson had no formal training in filmmaking, but learned about editing, special effects and makeup largely through his own trial and error. As a young adult, Jackson discovered the work of author J.R.R. Tolkien after watching The Lord of the Rings, an animated film by Ralph Bakshi that was a part adaptation of Tolkien's fantasy trilogy. When he was 16 years old, Jackson left school and began working full-time as a photo engraver for the local newspaper. For the 7 years he worked there, Jackson lived at home with his parents so he could save as much money as possible to spend on film equipment. After 2 years of work, Jackson bought a 16mm camera, and began shooting a film that later became Bad Taste. Influences and inspirations: Jackson has long cited several films as influences. It is well known that Jackson has a passion for King Kong, often citing it as his favorite film and as the film that inspired him early in his life. Jackson recalls attempting to remake King Kong when he was 12. At the 2009 San Diego Comic-Con International, while being interviewed alongside Avatar and Titanic director James Cameron, Jackson said certain films gave him a kick. He mentioned Martin Scorsese's films Goodfellas and Casino, remarking on something about those particular movies and the way Martin Scorsese just fearlessly rockets his camera around and has shot those films that I can watch those movies and feel inspired. Jackson has also said the 1970 film Waterloo inspired him in his youth. Career: The Splatter Phase, Jackson's first feature, Bad Taste, a haphazard fashion splatter comedy, which included many of Jackson's friends acting and working on it for free. Shooting was normally done in the weekend since Jackson was then working full-time. Bad Taste is about aliens that come to Earth with the intention of turning humans into food. Jackson had 2 acting roles, including a famous scene in which he fights himself on top of a cliff. The film was finally completed thanks to a late injection of finance from the New Zealand Film Commission, after Jim Booth, the body's executive director, became convinced of Jackson's talent. In May 1987, Bad Taste was unveiled at the Cannes Film Festival, where rights to the film quickly sold to 12 countries. Around this time Peter Jackson began working on writing a number of film scripts, in varied collaborative groupings with playwright Stephen Sinclair, writer Fran Walsh and writer-actor Danny Mulleran. Walsh would later become his life partner. Some of the scripts from this period, including a sequel to A Nightmare on Elm Street, have never been made into movies. The proposed zombie film Braindead underwent extensive rewrites. Jackson's next film to see release was Meet the Feebles, co-written by the 4 writers mentioned above. An ensemble musical comedy starring Muppet-style puppets, Meet the Feebles originally began as a short film intended for television, but was rapidly expanded into a full-length film after unexpected enthusiasm from Japanese investors, and the collapse of Braindead, 6 weeks before filming. Begun on a very low budget, Meet the Feebles went weeks over schedule. Jackson stated of his second feature-length film, "It's got a quality of humor that alienates a lot of people. It's very black, very satirical, very savage." Feebles marked Jackson's first collaboration with special effects team Richard Taylor and Tanya Roger, who would later work on all Jackson's movies. Jackson's next release was the horror comedy Braindead, now seen as a landmark in splatter movies. Originally planned as a Spanish co-production, the film reversed the usual zombie plot. Rather than keeping the zombies out of his place of refuge, the hero attempts to keep them inside, while maintaining a four-section aid of normality. The film features extensive special effects including miniature trams, stop motion and a plethora of gory makeup effects. Heavenly Creatures and Forgotten Silver, released in 1994 after Jackson won a race to bring the story to the screen, Heavenly Creatures marked a major change for Jackson in terms of both style and tone. The film is based on the real Parker Hume murder case in which 2 teenage girls in 1950s Christchurch became close friends and later murdered the mother of one of the girls. Jackson's partner Fran Walsh helped persuade him that the events had the makings of a movie. Jackson has been quoted saying that the film only got made because of her enthusiasm for the subject matter. Many New Zealanders were apprehensive about how Jackson would treat the material, an apprehension that would later turn in many cases to relief. The film's fame coincided with the New Zealand media tracking down the real-life Juliette Hume, who now writes books under the name Anne Perry. Jackson would cast the actors Melanie Lynskey and Kate Winslet in the roles of Parker and Hume. Heavenly Creatures received considerable critical acclaim, including an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay and making top 10 of the year lists in Time, The Guardian, the Sydney Morning Herald, and the New Zealand Herald. The success of Heavenly Creatures won Jackson attention from U.S. company Miramax, who promoted the film vigorously in America and signed the director to a first-look deal. The following year, in collaboration with Wellington filmmaker Costa Botts, Jackson co-directed the mockumentary Forgotten Silver. This ambitious made-for-television piece told the story of New Zealand film pioneer Colin Mackenzie, who had supposedly invented colour film and talkies, and attempted an epic film of Salome before being forgotten by the world. Though the program played in a slot normally reserved for drama, no other warning was given that it was fictionalized, and many viewers were outraged at discovering Colin Mackenzie had never existed. The number of people who believed the increasingly improbable story provides testimony to Jackson and Boat's skill at playing on New Zealand's national myth of a nation of innovators and forgotten trailblazers. Hollywood, Weta, and the Film Commission, the success of Heavenly Creatures helped pave the way for Jackson's first big-budget Hollywood film, The Frighteners starring Michael J. Fox, in 1996. Thanks partly to support from American producer Robert Zemeckis, Jackson was given permission to make this comedy horror film entirely in New Zealand despite being set in a North American town. This period was a key one of change for both Jackson and Weta Workshop, the special effects companion born from the one-man contributions of George Port to Heavenly Creatures with which Jackson is often associated. Weta, initiated by Jackson and key collaborators, grew rapidly during this period to incorporate both digital and physical effects, makeup and costumes, the first two areas normally commanded by Jackson collaborator Richard Taylor. The Frighteners was regarded as a commercial failure. Some critics expressed disappointment that it displayed little of the anarchistic humor of Jackson's early movies and that the script felt underdeveloped. In February 1997, Jackson launched legal proceedings against the New Zealand Listener magazine for defamation, over a review of The Frighteners which claimed that the film was built from the rubble of other people's movies. In the end, the case was not pursued further. Around this time Jackson's remake of King Kong was shelved by Universal Studios, partly because of Mighty Joe Young and Godzilla, both giant monster movies, that had already gone into production. Universal feared it would be thrown aside by the two higher-budget movies. This period of transition seems not to have been entirely a happy one. It also marked one of the high points of tension between Jackson and the New Zealand Film Commission since Meet the Feebles had gone over budget earlier in his career. Jackson has claimed the commission considered firing him from Feebles, though the NZFC went on to help fund his next three films. In 1997, the director submitted a lengthy criticism of the commission for a magazine supplement meant to celebrate the body's 20th anniversary, criticizing what he called inconsistent decision-making by inexperienced board members. The magazine felt that the material was too long and potentially defamatory to publish in that form. A shortened version of the material went on to appear in Metro magazine. In the Metro article Jackson criticized the commission over funding decisions concerning a film he was hoping to executive produce, but refused to drop a client confidentiality clause that allowed them to publicly reply to his criticisms. The Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson won the rights to film J.R.R. Tolkien's epic in 1997 after meeting with producer Saul Zaentz. Originally working with Miramax towards a two-film production, Jackson was later pressured to render the story as a single film, and finally overcame a tight deadline by making a last-minute deal with New Line, who were keen on a trilogy. Principal photography stretched from October 11, 1999 to December 22, 2000 with extensive location filming across New Zealand. With the benefit of extended post-production and extra periods of shooting before each film's release, the series met huge success and sent Jackson's popularity soaring. The Return of the King itself met with huge critical acclaim, winning 11 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. The film was the first of the fantasy film genre to win the award for Best Picture and was the second sequel to win Best Picture. Jackson's mother, Joan, died 3 days before the release of the first movie in the trilogy, The Fellowship of the Ring. There was a special showing of the film after her funeral. Following The Return of the King, Jackson lost a large amount of weight over 50 pounds to the point of being unrecognizable to some fans. In the Daily Telegraph, he attributed his weight loss to his diet. He said, "I just got tired of being overweight and unfit, so I changed my diet from hamburgers to yogurt and muesli and it seems to work." King Kong. Universal Studios signed Peter Jackson for a second time to remake the 1933 classic King Kong, the film that inspired him to become a film director as a child. He was reportedly paid a fee of $20 million upfront, the highest salary ever paid to date to a film director in advance of production, against a 20% take of the box office rentals. The film was released on December 14, 2005, and grossed around $550 million worldwide. The Lovely Bones. Jackson completed an adaptation of Alice Sebold's bestseller, The Lovely Bones, which was released in the United States on December 11, 2009. Jackson has said the film was a welcome relief from his larger-scale epics. The storyline's combination of fantasy aspects and themes of murder bears some similarities to Heavenly Creatures. The film ended up receiving generally mixed reviews and middling box office returns. It currently holds 32% rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. Current and future projects. Jackson had talked of producing films for others as early as 1995, but a number of factors slowed developments in this regard, including the failure of Jack Brown Genius. After he became a force in Hollywood, He was set to produce a $128 a million movie version of the science fiction video game series Halo, but the project went on hold when financial backers withdrew their support. Instead, Jackson worked with Halo director Neil Blomkamp on science fiction project District 9, which proved a box office hit and was nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture. Jackson was set to produce a remake of The Dam Busters, to be directed by longtime Weta designer Christian Rivers. Stephen Ferry has written a screenplay. Originally scheduled for 2009 €10, the project has been postponed. Jackson has also won the rights to a film adaptation of the fantasy novel series Temrara, a novel about dragons being used in combat in the Napoleonic Wars and a dragon named Temrara and his captain, Will Lawrence, written by Naomi Novik. It remains to be seen if he will direct it. In recent years, Jackson has also directed a short film entitled Crossing the Line to test a new model of digital cinema camera, the Red One. The film takes place during World War I, and was shot in 2 days. Crossing the Line was shown at NAB 2007. Clips of the film can be found at reducer.net. Jackson and his newly formed studio Wingnut Interactive were working on an unrevealed project being developed by Microsoft Game Studios in collaboration with Bungie Studios. The project has been officially titled Halo Chronicles, but beyond speculation little else was known about its nature. He was to be the executive producer on a Halo film, developed and released by Universal Studios and 20th Century Fox, but in October 2006 the film was postponed indefinitely. The film was never officially cancelled. In June 2008 Peter Jackson commented that, with upcoming developments, I wouldn't know when to expect a movie, and I'm the producer. Jackson spent $5 a million to purchase 20 hectares of land in Wairarapa, a property containing a mansion, private lake, tunnel and the interior of Bag End from The Lord of the Rings. In 2009, he purchased a Gulfstream G550 jet. His total net worth is estimated by National Business Review at $450 a million. Jackson owns an aircraft restoration and manufacturing company, the Vintage Aviator, which is dedicated to World War I and World War II fighter planes among other planes from the 1920s and 1930s. He is chairman of the Omaka Aviation Heritage Trust, which hosts a biennial air show. In late December 2009, Peter Jackson announced his interest on the movie adaptation of the novel Mortal Engines. In April 2010 it was confirmed that he would be both director and producer of the project. Tintin franchise. Jackson was one of 3 producers on The Adventures of Tintin, directed by Steven Spielberg and released in 2011. He is officially labeled as producer but helped Spielberg, before he began working on The Hobbit, directing the film. Jamie Bell and Andy Serkis were cast due to their collaboration with Peter Jackson on King Kong and The Lord of the Rings. Spielberg also chose to work with Peter Jackson due to the impressive digital work on the Lord of the Rings films, and knew Peter Jackson's company Weta Workshop would make his vision a reality. It received positive reviews and grossed $373 million at the box office. In December 2011, Spielberg confirmed a sequel to his 3D movie will be made and are said to be based on the 7 Crystal Balls and Prisoners of the Sun. He explained the Thompson detectives will have a much bigger role. The sequel will be produced by Spielberg and directed by Jackson. Kathleen Kennedy said the script might be done by February or March 2012 and motion captured in summer 2012. So that the movie will be on track to be released on either Christmas 2014 or summer 2015. In February 2012, Spielberg revealed to Total Film that they had completed a story outline for the sequel. During a press tour in Belgium for The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey in December 2012, Jackson said that the plan for a Tintin sequel would be to shoot the performance capture sometime in 2013, with a release date aimed for 2015. On March 12, 2013, in a visit to India to celebrate the success of his film Lincoln, Spielberg was asked by the Times of India about the status of the Tintin sequel. In response, Spielberg said, "Don't hold me to it, but we're hoping the film will come out around Christmas time in 2015. We know which books we're making, "We can't share that now, but we're combining two books which were always intended to be combined by Herge." The Hobbit. Jackson's involvement in the making of a film version of The Hobbit has a long and checkered history. In November 2006, a letter from Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh stated that due to an ongoing legal dispute between Wingnut Films and New Line Cinema, Jackson would not be directing the film. New Line Cinema's head Robert Shea commented that Jackson will never make any movie with New Line Cinema again while I'm still working at the company. This prompted an online call for a boycott of New Line Cinema, and by August 2007 Shea was trying to repair his working relationship. On December 18, 2007, it was announced that Peter Jackson and New Line Cinema had reached agreement to make two prequels, both based on The Hobbit, and to be released in 2012 and 2013 with Jackson as a writer and executive producer and Guillermo del Toro directing. However, in early 2010, Del Toro dropped out of directing the film because of production delays, and a month later Jackson was back in negotiations to direct The Hobbit. And on October 15 he was finalized as the director, with New Zealand confirmed as the location a couple of weeks later. The film started production on March 20, 2011. On July 30, 2012, Peter Jackson announced via his Facebook page that the two planned Hobbit movies would be expanded into a trilogy. The third film will not act as a bridge between The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings films, but will continue to expand the Hobbit story by using material found in the Lord of the Rings appendices. Games. Jackson was set to make games with Microsoft Game Studios, a partnership announced on September 27, 2006, at X06. Specifically, Jackson and Microsoft were teaming together to form a new studio called Wingnut Interactive. In collaboration with Bungie Studios, Jackson was to co-write, co-design and co-produce a new game taking place in the Halo universe, tentatively called Halo Chronicles. However, on July 27, 2009, in an interview about his new movie District 9, he said that Halo Chronicles had been cancelled, while Microsoft confirmed that the game is on hold. Jackson's game studio Wingnut Interactive is now at work on original intellectual property. Charitable activities. Jackson has given $500,000 New Zealand dollars to stem cell research. He purchased a church in the Wellington suburb of Seatown for about $10 a million, saving it from demolition. He also contributes his expertise to 48 Hours, a New Zealand filmmaking competition, through annually selecting 3 wildcards for the national final. Jackson, a World War I aviation enthusiast, is chair of the €14 Aviation Heritage Trust. He donated his services and provided replica aircraft to create a 10-minute multimedia display called Over the Front for the Australian War Memorial in 2008. He contributed to the Defence Fund for the West Memphis 3. In 2011, Jackson and Walsh purchased One Kent Terrace, the home of BAFTAs Theatre in Wellington, effectively securing the theatre's future. Style. Jackson is known for his attention to detail, a habit of shooting scenes from many angles, a macabre sense of humor, and a general playfulness, the latter to the point where the Lord of the Rings conceptual designer Alan Lee jokingly remarked the film is almost incidental really. Jackson was a noted perfectionist on the Lord of the Rings shoot, where he demanded numerous takes of scenes, requesting additional takes by repeatedly saying, "One more for luck." Jackson is also renowned within the New Zealand film industry for his insistence on coverage, shooting a scene from as many angles as possible, giving him more options during editing. Jackson has been known to spend days shooting a single scene. This is evident in his work where even scenes featuring simple conversations often feature a wide array of multiple camera angles and shot sizes as well as zooming close-ups on characters' faces. One of his most common visual trademarks is shooting close-ups of actors with wide-angle lenses. Unlike some other film directors, Jackson has remained in his native country to make films. This has been the genesis of several production and support companies. Most of Jackson's assets are found on the Miramar Peninsula in his hometown of Wellington, where much of his filming occurs. And he was instrumental in having the world premiere of The Return of the King in the city's iconic Embassy Theatre, which he helped restore. He was an early user of computer enhancement technology and provided digital special effects to a number of Hollywood films by use of telecommunications and satellite links to transmit raw images and the final results across the Pacific Ocean. During filming of The Lord of the Rings, Jackson was famous for wearing shorts and going barefoot, though most instances on set he was required to wear shoes for safety purposes. Cameo roles. Jackson is one of the lead actors in two of his films. In bad taste, he plays two characters named Derek and Robert, even engaging them both in a fight. In the mockumentary Forgotten Silver, he plays his own role. However, he appears in every film he directed, mostly in cameos. In the puppet movie Meet the Feebles, Jackson appears as an audience member disguised as one of the aliens from Bad Taste. In Braindead, he is the mortician's assistant. In Heavenly Creatures, he is the tramp who gets kissed by Juliette Hume. In The Frighteners, Jackson is a biker bumped into by Frank Bannister. In The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, Jackson plays a drunken, carrot-chomping citizen of Bree when the four hobbits are entering in town. In The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, he plays a spear-throwing defender of Helm's Deep. In his significant cameo in The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, he is seen as the bosun of a murderous corsair ship. This character is seen very briefly in the theatrical version. In the extended version he is on screen for a longer period of time and is accidentally killed by Legolas's warning shot. A detailed action figure of Jackson was made of this character in the same line as the rest of the Lord of the Rings toys. Jackson actually makes two cameos in Return of the King, during the scene of Shelob's lair, where Sam's hands are seen entering the shot as Shelob is wrapping Frodo in webbing. This was due to Sean Astin's temporary absence, and Jackson wanted to progress the production of the scene as much as possible, even without the actor. Jackson appears in his version of King Kong as a biplane gunner attacking Kong in New York, reprising the cameo which original King Kong filmmaker Marion C. Cooper made in the original 1933 film. In The Lovely Bones, he appears as a customer in a camera store playing with a camera. In The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, Jackson plays one of the dwarves escaping from Erebor after Smaug has attacked. In The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, he appears as a drunken, carrot-chomping citizen of Bree, much like his appearance in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. He has also made cameos in several films not directed by him. In the opening sequence of Hot Fuzz, he played a demented man dressed as Father Christmas, who stabs Nicholas Angel in the hand. Peg, in the commentary, joked that when Jackson saw that his cameo was extremely short, he walked out of the cinema and walked in circles in the hallway for the rest of the duration of the film. Jackson's eldest son, Billy, has made cameo appearances in every one of his father's films since his birth, namely The Frighteners, The Lord of the Rings film trilogy, and King Kong. His daughter, Katie, appears in all the above films except The Frighteners. His life partner and co-writer Fran Walsh makes a short cameo in The Frighteners as a woman walking next to Cyrus and Stuart just prior the scene featuring their son Billy. Jackson had a cameo on the HBO show Entourage in August 5, 2007 episode, Gary's Desk, in which he offers a business proposal to Eric Murphy, manager to the lead character, Vincent Chase. Jackson also appears as himself in the 2013 Doctor Who 50th anniversary spoof The Five-ish Doctors reboot, alongside Ian McKellen. Jackson appeared briefly in an airline passenger safety video for Air New Zealand, made in the style of a Hobbit movie, called An Unexpected Briefing. Filmography. As director, since 1994's Heavenly Creatures, Peter Jackson's films have enjoyed success in the annual awards season, earning many nominations and winning several awards. The Frighteners being his only directed effort since 1994 not to be nominated for either an Oscar, a BAFTA or a Golden Globe. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is one of the most successful trilogies of all time in terms of awards, winning more Academy Awards than the Francis Ford Coppola-directed Godfather trilogy, with 2003's The Return of the King winning in all 11 categories for which it was nominated, including Best Picture, Director and Adapted Screenplay. Jackson's films have fared extremely well in the technical categories as well as the major categories, All three Lord of the Rings pictures won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects in their respective years. King Kong also won the award for visual effects. In total, Jackson's directed efforts have been the most awarded films at three separate, the 74th, 76th and 78th, annual Academy Awards ceremonies. Awards and Honors, Awards and Nominations, Honors. In the New Year Honours 2002, Jackson was appointed as a Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit. In the New Year Honours 2010, Jackson was promoted to Knight Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit for services to film. The investiture ceremony took place at Premier House in Wellington on April 28, 2010. In the Queen's Birthday and Diamond Jubilee Honours 2012, Jackson was appointed to the Order of New Zealand. This is New Zealand's highest honour, and with the previous honours is now Sir Peter Jackson ONZ KNZM. Titles and styles: Mr. Peter Robert Jackson 1961 Euro 2002, Mr. Peter Robert Jackson CNZM 2002 Euro 2010, Sir Peter Robert Jackson KNZM 2010 Euro 2012, Sir Peter Robert Jackson ONZ KNZM 2012 Euro. Bibliography: Brian Sibley. Peter Jackson: A Filmmaker's Journey. Sydney, HarperCollins, 2006. ISBN 0-7322-8562-3. Ian Pryor. Peter Jackson: From Prince of Splatter to Lord of the Rings. Auckland, Random House, 2003, New York, St. Martin's Press, 2004. ISBN 1-86941-555-8, Andrea Bordini, Matteo Marino, Peter Jackson. Milan, Il Castoro, 2002. ISBN 978-88-8033-225-1. The first book-length study of the director. See also, Cinema of New Zealand, List of New Zealand filmmakers. Park Road Post, references. External links: Peter Jackson on Facebook, Peter Jackson at the Internet Movie Database, Peter Jackson Collected News and Commentary at the New York Times, Peter Jackson at FearNet, Peter Jackson's Trip from Splatstick to RAF.